Welcome to a new planetary and seismic update. We have a few things to cover, so this is probably going to be a bit more lengthy update. First, we'll look at what happened in the previous time frame. On the SSGI graph, with a threshold of magnitude 5.5, we see an obvious clustering following the planetary geometry on the 4th. That is the high blue peak, and this is because Earth was in a conjunction with Mercury and Venus practically at the same time. There was the potential for larger seismic activity following that geometry, but that didn't happen. But we do see obvious clustering of stronger earthquakes. We actually lowered the threshold to 5.5 because seismic activity has been relatively low. Actually, since early April, the largest earthquake since early April is a 6.6. So it is actually relatively quiet. We do have stronger earthquakes, but mostly in the higher 5 magnitude range. So lowering the magnitude by 0.1 to 5.5, we see this obvious clustering following that geometry. We also had some minimal clustering on the 9th, 6.2, the strongest earthquake actually in this previous time frame, and also a 5.7. Remember, stronger earthquakes in the higher 5 and 6 magnitude range, they tend to occur in clusters. We can average that out, but averages is theory and does not apply to reality. As you can see here, this obvious clustering, we see this repeatedly with a specific planetary geometry. So that's the seismic activity that we actually had in the previous time frame. If we look at the coming time frame, it's going to be somewhat different. We're going to have, again, right angle geometry that is really dominant, just as the previous time frame, but there is a major difference because we're going to have Venus, Earth and Neptune at right angle geometry, and that really deserves attention. If you look at this SGI graph here from 11 to 20 June, we see obvious right angle geometry again with Venus a lot, with Mercury also, and we see two clusters, or let's say grouping of critical planetary geometry. That's on the 14th and also on the 17th. Now the 17th I will discuss later because the potential for that geometry depends on what happens following the geometry on the 14th. So first, on the 14th, we have Venus at a right angle with Earth and Neptune, like I said. And that converges with a planetary conjunction, that's Mercury, Sun, Earth. And also another right angle geometry, Sun, Venus and Mars, and that all happens on the 14th. There's also some right angle geometry later on the 12th, and if we look at the solar system, how this geometry looks like, we see Venus at the right angle with Earth and with Neptune. We also see Earth in a conjunction with Mercury and the Sun, and we see the Sun at the right angle with Mars and Venus. And that all happens on the 14th in a short time. And that geometry will be followed by lunar geometry with Saturn and especially with Neptune that also deserves attention. So let's have a look at this Venus, Earth, Neptune right angle geometry. The last time that this occurred was in January, on January 21st, and it was immediately followed a day later by a magnitude 7 earthquake. That's the potential of that geometry. So just to give you an idea what that geometry can do, this is the magnitude 7 earthquake in China on the 22nd, and it followed on the geometry on the 21st, again with Venus at a right angle position with Earth and Neptune. We can also have a very extreme example, just to give you an idea. That's probably not going to apply to the coming time frame, but just to give you an idea. In 1868, there was a magnitude 9 earthquake in Arica, Chile. That was on the 13th. It was preceded by a strong right angle geometry with Venus, Earth and Neptune. It is the high purple peak, dashed lines, and that geometry lasted almost for 2 days. Exceptional. And it converged with planetary conjunctions involving Mercury. And this geometry also always occurs in pairs. So we see also Earth at the right angle with Venus and Neptune 2 or 3 days later. And as you can see, the magnitude 9 earthquake occurred before Earth reached a right angle geometry. So this indicates that Venus is the really critical one here. That's the earthquake trigger. And that is what happened in 1868. If you go back to January, we can also see that the right angle geometry occurred with Venus before the magnitude 7 earthquake. So it is really Venus that we should pay attention to. Now, to the current or the next time frame, we see that Venus will be in a right angle with Earth and Neptune, and that will be on the 14th. So the larger seismic activity is probably going to occur on the 15th or 16th before Earth reaches the right angle geometry with Venus and Neptune. So 15, 16 is probably most critical, and there is the potential for larger seismic activity. This could be clustering into the 6 magnitude range. It's also possible that it will go over 7 magnitude and that we're going to have a major seismic event on the 15th or 16th. It's been a while since we had larger seismic activity. Again, it was before early April that we need to look at the higher 6 or even 7 magnitude range. So we also have some clustering or grouping of critical geometry on the 17th. Again, that will be Earth in the right angle position with Venus and Neptune. And there will also be a planetary conjunction, that is Venus, Mercury and Earth. This is a critical conjunction, by the way. But again, it's difficult to make any estimates here because we really need to see what is going to happen following the planetary geometry on the 14th. So again, be on watch on the 15th, 16th in particular, because the right angle geometry with Venus is the most critical one here. That's the real earthquake trigger. Now, we also picked up some atmospheric anomalies. Actually, it has been relatively quiet seismically, but also in the atmosphere. In the first week of June, we didn't pick up any significant atmospheric anomalies. It really started again on 8 June and also on 10 June. On 8 June, we picked up some atmospheric fluctuations over the Pacific. Not really unusual, of course. But since a long time, we also picked up some anomalies marking the regions over Turkey, the Middle East and Eastern Africa. And that's been a while. It wasn't really a really significant anomaly. Going by the size of the anomaly, I would expect a magnitude 6 earthquake if there is going to be a seismic response. And Turkey, Syria, Lebanon, they are part of the risky area. And but also East Africa. And there can also be even magnitude 7 seismic activity. Doesn't happen a lot. But again, I don't expect a major earthquake along this fault. It's not impossible, but going by the anomaly, I think that magnitude 6 is most likely. And also south of Africa, South Africa, but also south of Africa, there's a fault line running. So it is very well possible that if there is a seismic response to this anomaly, that is going to be south of Africa or in Africa. It's not necessarily Turkey, but Turkey, Syria, Lebanon, especially Turkey, is the most seismically active area along this marker. And speaking of which, people have been asking what this line actually is. This line over the Earth from north to south, the marker that we put on the map. This is actually Earth's axis. So this is Earth's axis rotation, and that's how we actually mark the regions. The atmospheric anomalies that we measure, we relate them to Earth's axis rotation, and that's the line that you see. The technology currently doesn't allow for more precise estimates. This is a rough estimate. The regions also, it can be a bit to the west, it can be a bit to the east. This information is also on the website, by the way. So Turkey, if we look at the situation, because there were major earthquakes in Turkey, of course, we look on the map here and we see the rupture zones of the major earthquakes in Turkey in 2023. The largest was a 7.8, and that was along the East Anatolia fault. This is the red line that you see. And there was a 7.5 magnitude earthquake hours later, and that is the rupture zone that you see a little bit to the north. It is possible that some aftershock activity, that's what we could consider them if that were to occur, would happen along these rupture zones. But it's more likely that if there's going to be a seismic response and a stronger seismic activity, that it will happen to the east or to the west. These are adjacent areas adjacent to the rupture zones of 2023. So that could be to the east, it could be to the west a little bit, also to the south, by the way. Lebanon could be at risk. There have been major earthquakes there in the past, and it's been a while, so we cannot rule out that possibility. But again, if there's going to be a seismic response, in this region in the coming time frame. It will most likely be into the 6 magnitude range, maybe higher 5 or 6 magnitude. I don't expect a really major earthquake. I cannot rule out that entirely, but it's less likely. So if you look at the SSGI graph again, it's really difficult to say when, if it's going to happen, when exactly that is going to be. I don't expect an obvious seismic increase before the 13th. If you look at the planetary geometry, it really becomes critical later on the 12th and the 13th. And that is the time when I expect clustering of strong earthquakes, higher 5 and possibly 6 magnitude, with a possible peak on the 15th and 16th. And it's a bit of a question mark what's going to happen at and after the 17th. But Earth in a conjunction with Venus and Mercury, that can also be an obvious earthquake trigger. So it's very well likely that we're going to see more than one 6 magnitude earthquake. In the last time frame, we only had one 6-pointer. So we don't have a magnitude 6 every 3 days. They tend to occur in clusters, and it's very well possible in the coming time frame that we're going to have more than one magnitude 6 earthquake following the most critical geometry that we see here on the SSGI graph. This is a lengthy update. You can also find updates on the website and in the social media. Also the atmospheric fluctuations. We update the website and social media regularly. So be sure to check out these updates. This is the update for now. Stay safe. Until next time.